So we're going to talk a little bit about Kant's aesthetic theory today, and I'm going to try and give you the best summary that I can. And hopefully this will help you with the stuff that we were supposed to read for this week. First of all, it's important to understand that Kant claimed that there are three modes of consciousness in human beings. So you have knowledge, you have desire, and you have feeling. And the nature and the limits of human knowledge is the subject of his first work, The Critique of Pure Reason, which is from 1781. His second work, The Critique of Practical Reason, deals with the nature of desire, duty, and moral law. And then the nature of aesthetic and teleological judgments, as well as feelings of the beautiful and sublime, are the central issues that he faced in the third critique, which is the critique of judgment, and that's the work that we're dealing with today, and that's from 1790. So Kant sets out in this third critique to prove that our aesthetic experiences are independent of both moral duty and knowledge. So this relates to his greater project, right? So he's got these ideas of these three modes of being, and he's created works that deal with each one, and he's saying that they're independent of each other. So knowledge and moral duty do not influence our understanding of what we believe to be beautiful. Okay, a related goal to this main goal is to use the concept of aesthetic experience to reunite nature and freedom. So nature Kant considers to be a realm of deterministic causal order, and freedom is human and non-deterministic moral order, after he's previously separated them in the first two critiques. So much of this work was done as a response to British empiricism, particularly people like David Hume and inner sense theories. Now, while Kant agrees with Hume on several points, that judgments of taste have something to do with our feelings of pleasure in the presence of certain objects, thus such judgments cannot be taken as objectively valid nor governed by rules, right? At best, judgments of taste can be intersubjectively valid. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go. So don't worry, we'll unpack that. But Kant also thinks that prior aesthetic theories tended to conflate various types of judgments, in particular judgments of taste and judgments of the agreeable. So he thinks that what people have said previously about aesthetics have a tendency to sort of combine several things that shouldn't be combined. Okay. In the Critique of Judgment, he argues that the judgments of taste are universally and necessarily valid a priori. So Kant's philosophy attempts to explain human experience in terms of faculty psychology, or by the appeal to distinct faculties of the mind. So if you look at this schematic representation, this will give you an idea about sort of what Kant is thinking, right? So you have, on the one hand, phenomenon that are perceived through the senses, right? So you get an intuition or a consciousness of an object, which is a result of the faculties of either sensibility or imagination, right? And an intuition is a singular, and it's direct, and it's caused by the action of the external world of the sense organs. So that's one type of stimuli. And then you have a concept, which is a representation produced by the faculty of understanding of a possible object of consciousness. It's general and it's indirect and it's produced by the mind, right? So understanding produces concepts while imagination collects intuitions, right? So intuitions are synthesized by the means of cognitive judgments. So the synthesis of a quote-unquote manifold of intuitions is produced by the faculty of imagination and brought under a concept by the faculty of understanding. So for example, if I enter a room and I see on the desk in front of me is a single red rose in a tall, slender vase, the sensation of the rose, for instance, the light reflecting off the surface of the object and into my eyes, the feel of the waxiness of the petals, the aroma of its scent, right? They give rise to an immediate intuition of the object which I see as a rose. So the term seeing as is one way of expressing the judgment, this is a rose. Now this constitutes a common and ordinary act of cognition which results from the interaction of imagination and understanding. So the third critique is the analysis of the judgment of taste, or the beautiful. Now, judgment of taste is subjective. In a logical judgment, this is a rose, that type of concept is applied to an object. In this judgment, in this sense, is objective. In the aesthetic judgment of the form, this is beautiful, said in response to the appearance of the rose, the representation, which in this case is not a concept, is referred to as a subject in conjunction with a feeling. Now, since the judgment of taste is aesthetic, it's also subjective, which means that it's relative to the particular feelings of the subject. So, this relates to the idea that the judgment of taste is disinterested. And Kant distinguishes three kinds of pleasure. You have pleasure in the agreeable, which is interested. You have pleasure in the good, which is disinterested. And you have pleasure in the beautiful, which is disinterested. So agreeable is interested, good is interested, and the pleasure in the beautiful is disinterested. The satisfaction of feeling of the beautiful is disinterested, which means that it doesn't produce a desire or interest in possession. The liking we connect with the presentation of the existence of an object. This distinguishes it from simple pleasure taken in the agreeable. As it says here, beauty is specific. We take pleasure in something because we judge it beautiful rather than deciding it to be beautiful because we find it pleasurable. So things can be found to be nice or pleasurable, so agreeable or good, without being beautiful. The aesthetic judgment is not like a moral judgment either, since that implies a purpose or a goal, right? So that which is good must be good relative to some purpose. It must be good for something, or good as an example of a kind of thing for which a purpose or end exists. Therefore, the judgment of taste is purely contemplative. Okay, so that deals with this aspect, the idea of disinterest, which means that beauty is something that is, a judgment of taste in terms of beauty is something that's separate from that which is good or agreeable. On the other side, you have this idea of beauty being universal. A judgment of taste, this idea of universality follows out of disinterestedness. So the universality of judgment of taste is not objective, as in logical judgments, but subjective. This is a rose is an objective judgment, with this is beautiful as a subjective judgment, as we said a minute ago. The former attributes a concept to an object, while the latter attributes implicitly a feeling of pleasure to a subject. So the judgment of taste, this is where we talked about intersubjective validity. This means that since it's based on a feeling and not a concept applied to an object, everyone is expected to agree with such a judgment. So in other words, the idea of beauty being universal means that everybody would agree to the judgment because it's natural to do so. There is inherent beauty inside the form. So when we talk about intersubjective validity, this also allows us to avoid relativism. So this is possible because, first of all, the judgment of taste or beauty is not universal in the same sense that the statement, all roses have petals, is universal. So it's not a logical judgment. An aesthetic judgment is particular, which means that it's not general. It's not the result of a generalization given by rules or principle of reason, as we talked about before. All roses have petals, all roses are beautiful. Neither judgment is particular, so neither one is aesthetic, even though the latter has to do with beauty. One has to be in the presence of the object in order to form an aesthetic judgment. It makes no sense to judge an object beautiful on the basis of hearsay. So there are no a priori rules to which one could appeal in judging an object to be beautiful. So if an aesthetic judgment is related to a feature common to all human minds, then the claim of universality would make sense. For Kant, this means that it must be related to knowledge in general as a general feature of human cognition. This general feature is the harmony of imagination and understanding, or the free play of the cognitive faculties. So this relates to some ideas that Kant has about how, the differences between what he's saying and what, for instance, somebody like Burke would say. So Burke would say that the sublime is emotional and that beauty is rational. However, this doesn't jibe with the separation of the types of faculties that Kant is describing. So Kant rather looks at beauty as having order of form, whereas the sublime has a disordered form. And the way that I can best sort of describe that is sublime is immense and disordered and scary and pleasurable all at once, or thrilling, like the sinking of the Titanic, or like this photograph of two photographs melded together of this storm over what appears to be New York with the Statue of Liberty in the background. It's like a roller coaster, something that is pleasurable and also scary at the same time. Whereas beauty, according to Kant, is something that's ordered and measurable to a standard of form that's universally understood in a common knowledge way. So the perfect example of this is the golden rectangle. It's used as a design principle to order space in order to make things supposedly universally appealing to the eye. And it's used all over the place, in credit cards, in cereal boxes, in Renaissance paintings. This is sort of the purest form of Kant's idea of beauty.